Hello, everyone. My name is Chris Rydell, actor and now podcast host, I guess. That guy you've seen on a million TV shows and movies, but you still do not know my name.
And I'm David Allen Bache, actor and sometimes producer. And you also recognize me from lots of films and TV shows, but you probably couldn't name one of them right now if I paid you to.
The two of us and our guests are going to let you in on some secrets on how to make it as an actor and share some private stories from the many movies and TV shows that we've worked on.
That's right. We're going to interview a special guest each week, and we'll get their best advice and wisdom for you about how to break into this business and how to stay in it. And yes, again, there will be stories. So, let's get to it.
This is Confessions of a Working Actor.
Chris, that does not look like your usual recording spot. Where are you?
I'm lost in London.
Oh, that's a good city to get lost in.
I came out here to see my son, and my grandson, and my daughter-in-law.
That's fantastic.
Things are good. I'm in East London, very happening. You walk out the door, all kinds of food and people.
Yeah. Will you get a chance to see anything on the West End while you're there or anything like that, or not this trip?
No, I'm just seeing diapers and a baby. Actually, he's 2. So I spent, I've done like 15,000 steps trying to get him to fall asleep in the stroller, walking around London. I've been to the park and the swing maybe, 3 times a day.
Perfect. See, that'll keep you busy.
So, yeah, I heard you did a VO. Is this true? Did you?
Oh, yes. I did a little, I was recording a little voiceover for a pharmaceutical company, and I think it's like an industrial thing, but they were very happy with this booth, with this sound booth that I'm talking to you from. So that's a good thing.
Well, I'm sure they were, happy with your voice.
Well, I hope so. I hope so. We'll see. People are listening to the podcast, apparently. You have a good voice. I have a good voice. So, I guess that's like 90% of the game.
Yeah, I got to do a VO the other day, too.
Oh, yeah? How'd it go?
Yeah. It went pretty good. I did it at hotels.com.
Oh, yes. Good. I hope it runs and runs and runs and runs.
Me too.
I love it.
Mountain Lodge.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Well, let's get into it. This week we got a guy. He's more than just a guy who knows a guy whose brother or cousin can do the thing to the other guy. He's quite a guy. He's Tommy Longo from the Deuce.
Well, I know that he's also Joe Martini from NYC 22.
That's right. He's Patrick Parisi from the Sopranos. This guy and I worked together on the film United 93, and I'm here to tell you he's absolutely spectacular. He is an intense, dedicated actor. He's an inspiration to anyone who's lucky enough to share a stage or a screen with him, and I hope he likes that introduction.
Well, let's welcome Daniel Sauli. Welcome.
Daniel.
You guys, just that was a shot of the best frosting on a cake that I've ever had in my life.
That's it. That's what we do here at Confessions of a Working Actor.
That was more sugar than any actor deserves.
No, you deserve it, brother. You deserve it.
Very nice.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Where are we talking to you? We know Chris is in London today. I'm in New York. Where are you, Daniel?
I am also in New York.
Very good. Very good.
I was supposed to be elsewhere, but I made it back to New York.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah. Can I just say, Chris, just to go back a second, grandfather?
Yeah.
Yep. I'm almost 2 times over.
I can't wrap my head around that.
Yeah.
You got going very, very early.
Yeah, he did.
Smart man.
Yeah.
Smart man.
It is kind of smart, actually.
Yeah,
it wasn't
smart.
Easy. At the beginning, it's tough.
With them.
When your friends are running around going we're going out, we're going to afters. Are you coming? I'm like, no, I actually got a kid, And then all of a sudden they're like, in their 50s with a kid going, what was I thinking, man?
That's right.
Now, what was I doing?
It's like
By
getting
the way,
residual checks from old network shows. Like, that's why I focused on getting this job.
Yeah, I would be one of those guys, by the way, Chris. Yeah, I have a 13-year-old, and now I'm like, I'm going through the high school application process, and I could barely keep up.
It doesn't matter.
I'm just
It's like
thinking about getting it going now. I mean, like, come on. Oh my God.
Get on it. Get on it.
Get on it. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's focus on your career and your body of work. So that'll take some pressure off.
Thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you. And I just wanted to ask, I know one of the recent things you did, I believe, was a film with Naomi Watts and my buddy Bobby Cannevale called This Is the Night. Was that a horror movie? Like what was it?
So I got to tell you something. I don't. What happened to that movie?
I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I don't know what I didn't ever see it. I've heard about it. I think it's.
So
did you shoot it? Like what? Tell us what happened.
Yes, but that was years ago. That was so. What happened to that movie? I have not heard anything about it. So do you want to hear the back or?
We want to hear all about it because there's actors listening that also, maybe they've never experienced that where you do a project and then it's like, you got to let go. You got to let go of it and you never know what's going to happen.
So I did, I think it was a really short shoot. It was an indie. They got money because the director is well known for some like horror series where like the Purge, that was called The Purge, where like you go. But I know this guy because he wrote a pilot that I did in 2004 for Showtime or 2003 maybe, with Marcia Gay Harden, with the team that had just won an Oscar for, what was that cool movie? Oh God, for Kevin Spacey and Allison Janney.
Talking about American Beauty?
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, Alan Ball. Alan Ball wrote that, right? American Beauty.
Right. So James, who had linked up with those producers, wrote this pilot, didn't go. And I've always been in touch with him. He's a nice guy from Staten Island. He's like doing an indie. And I ended up, the best thing about that project was that I ended up in a car with Max Casella for 2 days, who I had never met. He was like a great New York character actor.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd be a great guy to talk to too. Anyway, so that was great, but I have not seen it. It was like a comedy. It was about, it was James trying to do his like personal film after he'd made all this money doing the splatter, the action, whatever film.
Interesting. That's why I asked if it was a horror because I assumed.
No, it's about I'll tell you the story. It's about the night like Rocky 3 or 4 was released, and he was a kid in Staten Island, and there's like. I don't know. It's very like Italian American, out of my realm. I reached my ceiling of Italian American stuff, but it was very like local, and so I don't really know. But that was like 2-3 years ago. I should maybe find out what's going on there.
Interesting.
It was fun. It was like a comedy. We were improvising in a car all night. Max Casella is like one of those actors where I'm not a huge baseball guy, but I definitely caught a baseball with a new mitt, and I've caught one with a really well-worn mitt. And you get those actors that are really well-worn, and you're just having catch with them. That's Max.
That's a great analogy. That's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So anyway, sorry I didn't have more about. I haven't actually seen it, but.
No, that's happened to me where I've especially with independent film, you shoot something and then that's it. Maybe you never hear from them again, or then sometimes 2-3 years later, all of a sudden there's a distribution deal and someone wants you to do an interview or show up somewhere or take a picture. You really never know.
Right.
Yeah, I've had that experience. I did a Dario Argento. He's an Italian horror film director.
Of course, master.
Yeah, the master. But this was like his film that wasn't going to be really a horror film. And it's like, that doesn't work,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting.
It's
the original
really
Suspiria was a big influence on me. I grew up between, David, I don't know if you know this, I grew up between Florence, Italy and New York City because my dad lives there. My mom, he's from there. My mom's from here. And so I remember seeing it on TV as a kid when you don't quite know what camp is yet. You don't quite know you're impressionable. And the original Suspiria, that was, they would show those on TV all the time in Italy. There's no kind of rating system there,
Yeah, thank God.
Creepy.
Well, and so that's a good segue, I think, into, you split your time between Italy and the U.S. when you were younger. How'd you get started in this crazy business?
Well, I'll just tell you the story simply. I was in high school in Manhattan and in New York City, and I had a very active social life, and I played a lot of soccer, and I smoked a lot of weed, and I liked artistic things like music and such, but I really didn't have much direction at all. And so in my senior year in high school, I did the Zoo Story, Edward Albee.
Albee.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They were like, all right, I'll do a play. Just like, instead of going to Sheep's Meadow or whatever and, hanging out. And when I moved from Italy, I remember we moved back to the apartment that my grandmother bought in the 50s for like $13,000 on West 83rd Street. And we go down to the park there. And I had gone to camp upstate when we were living in Italy. I'd come back, and my grandmother had a place in the Hudson Valley because she ran a camp there. She was a social worker, my American grandmother. And I was in the park with my mom. We had just gotten here. I said, Mom, I know that guy, the kid from camp. And it was this kid named Matt Emeth. And his mom was a divorced mother. And she happened to live in the building that we lived in. Well, she ended up being one of my mother's close friends for the next 30 years, 40 years, until her death, actually, right at the beginning of the pandemic. And she was a very well-known Broadway producer. So before I was even into acting, they were just pals, right? And I did this play, and she just came to see it as a pal. And she takes me aside afterward, very dramatically. And everyone was like, oh, this woman's so histrionic, which she was. She says, oh, dearie. I said, what? She goes, oh, dearie. I said, what? You have to do this. I'm like, do what? She goes, you should really, really probably do this. And I'm like, probably? She said, it's a miserable life. And I'm like, I'm 18. I'm like, oh, this woman. Everyone's like, oh, she's being so dramatic. I went that weekend, read for a dear friend of hers who was a wonderful actress, phenomenal actress, who has another story. You should interview her someday. And a casting director, she sent me to her agent at the time, who was a woman named, well, I won't mention her, but she was at a place called Susan Smith Agency. And that summer, before I had already signed up to go to liberal arts college, which happened to have a good drama program, but I was auditioning for the Basketball Diaries and, these kind of things. And I didn't know what was going on. I was like, you go in and you kind of do what you do. And I almost got cast in several things. I didn't. I went off to this college for 2 years. After 2 years, it wasn't working. I was like, I'd reached reached the ceiling there. And fortuitously, they had because my mother was a professor at another liberal arts college in the Northeast, they had a tuition exchange program with her school, and her school was affiliated with a theater school in Paris. So I basically transferred to that school. And by way of being a student at that school where I didn't pay, I went to this program for free in Paris, which was the most formative time of my life because it has nothing to do with the work that I've done in terms of realism as an actor. It had to do with styles of theater, and it really taught you how to be an artist, which has been a blessing and a curse in a weird way. But that was it. From there, I went and I studied and I worked. And then I don't say this glibly. I say this understanding how utterly difficult it is. But I got back to New York, and a week after I got cast in a Broadway play.
Ding, 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 ding.
I mean, it just like, and it happened to be a hit. It was a revival of A View from the Bridge with Anthony LaPaglia and Allison Janney. Yeah. The late Brittany Murphy.
Yep.
And then before that ended, I got cast in a West End play with Liam Neeson.
Daniel, tell us something that, obviously, you've had a real journey, and studying, really helps. It's like you don't get cast in stuff. You go away, you're doing the work in college, you come back and you get cast in something. Tell us something you've obviously been working a long time, something that you wish that you had known about this business when you started that you know now.
Well, I wish I'd known when I got the first two plays, Broadway and West End. I wish that I'd known 6 months later I'd be waiting tables again. I wish I had known that from that. Well, another thing, I wish I'd started writing earlier. I've always had a mind that is interested, to be honest with you, equally in lights, rhythm, music, angles, and the craft of building something, as much as like an emotional truth in a moment. And to be honest with you, maybe that the former things have eclipsed a little bit currently the being an actor and not having much agency. Because to be honest with you, you don't. Right. Even if it's going well, you're working on someone else's thing. And I've worked with stars and I've worked with people and I look at them and I say, wow, they're just like me with much higher class of problems. Meaning they're moved around by other people. They're told when they can or can't. And if you'd known that, if you really understand that, and you don't worry about, I have to be honest, I don't think fame has ever interested me. I know that sounds weird. And that might be a problem if you don't have this like blind like thing like, oh, I need to be on the cover of this and do this. If you really like know where you stand in the scheme of storytelling, it would free you up at any point, especially when you start, to pursue any of the channels that it offers. And writing is a great one because you can do it on your own. It's tricky as actors. We like to be with other people and we like kinetic energy and to socialize and to make jokes. So it's not always intuitive for the actor to sit at a flipping computer. But if you learn how to master that and you find the same flow state alone that you can find in a scene, your feet kind of lift off the ground, you have a big leg up in the creative process in life, a real big leg up.
Yeah.
So I wish I'd known that earlier on.
Yeah.
And I also wish like someone had demystified the business side of it a bit. You know, you guys remember, it's like, before you get on camera, you're like, oh my God, what is that? What does that look like? How do I do it? There are all these people. And agents don't help.
No.
Managers don't really help. They throw you in there. They're like, all right, let's throw you in.
It's all trial by fire.
Right? It's all trial by fire. They throw poop at the wall and they're like, oh, he's sticking. Let's go with him.
You know, young actors.
Young Sean Penn.
Right. And young actors asks me sometimes, like actors that I talk to or mentor, should I do extra work? Right. And I'm going to tie this back to what you just said. And I usually say to them, really, especially if they're just coming out of college, I say you absolutely should. First of all, you'll be treated poorly. It's very likely when you do background work, unfortunately, that there's a lot of people and it's hard to keep track of everyone and they don't have enough attention and sometimes don't have enough patience or compassion or kindness to go around. But there are, good sets, good ADs, people who work with background who are respectful, and hopefully you end up on that set. But just be ready that it's not necessarily about being treated well, but go and do it a few times. Don't do it more than a few times because then they'll just see you as a background actor. But go and learn what's going on that goddamn set. Like, who the hell are all these people and what do they do? Because no one teaches you that. They stick you in front of a camera and you're like, what is that person doing? Why is there a guy just like holding wires? Like,
it's
what?
Great advice.
And I say, go learn about sets, be on a set and demystify it. It's just what you said.
I'll piggyback on that too. You meet a lot of people early on, they get frustrated with nepotism. Nepotism exists in every walk of life, okay? In every sector it exists. In the world of sports, it exists, right? In the world of academia, it exists, okay? What people who have well-known or famous parents learn is how to be on a set. And that whole section of it removes a level of nerves and a level of mystery that can work against you actually being present. That's all they really get, you know what I mean? But it is a big thing that I've learned over time. My friend Adam Scott, name dropping here, years ago, I've known that dude for ages. And he was just saying like, he brought someone up, I forget who it was. And he's like, yeah, well, what they know is how to walk around a set. I was like, that's right.
Yeah.
I spent half my time being stressed in the first, 5-10 jobs that I got. Being like, oh God, okay, how does it? And then you have to think about the work. And once you deal with all that nonsense of being on the set, you're like, right. And now I have to be like in my acting class moment to moment. You know what I mean? There's so much working against you.
Chris, what do you think? Would you agree with that?
I agree with it. I grew up on movie sets and, I knew exactly where the craft service table was and I knew what the first AD was doing. I knew why someone was yelling at me with a megaphone, and I kind of learned who was boss and who, to make sure that you treated, first of all, you treat everybody with the same respect, but, there's times where, it gets frustrating as an actor, you don't realize that like, oh my God, there's going to be somebody patting my face down like 4 seconds before I'm about to like cry, and someone like fixing my collar, and telling me my shirt's not tucked in right, like, how do you focus? Do you learn to focus on a movie set as opposed to, being in a play where
different than an acting class too, right? Where it's,
Oh yeah. It is, I don't care. I never went to an acting class where someone was like, excuse me, sir, I'm going to pat you down right now with some makeup and fix your shirt collar right before I'm about to do something.
Right. The opposite. It's freedom. It's feeling. Let's let it go.
Right.
Yeah. But I loved being on a stage at a studio. To me, that there was something magical about being in a place that had 45-foot ceilings, and the smell of this place, it was, literally, like, I saw John Wayne die like with guns and stuff as a kid. I didn't even realize that I was actually on a stage, like I was 7, 8 years old going like, holy shit, like this is like crazy. There are horses and like inside, and lights and it's so exciting. To me, that was everything, It's fine being on the street on a location, but to be in a studio on a stage has got a whole nother feeling.
I think to like, just maybe to sum up the question or the answer is like, anything that relaxes you works in your favor. That's all you need to do. It's just about relaxation. It's just and how can you be relaxed when you're 23 or 24 and you have no concept of any of it? You're just thrown in. I wish someone had simply said, or there had been a course or a class or something, that says, okay, so just keep in mind, this is actually the way things go down. Yeah. And it's not quite as maybe complicated as the mystery and dimension of it in your mind might make it before you actually get to it.
It seems it seems glamorous and mysterious and ethereal, and then all of a sudden it's just show up, do your work, try to be relaxed. Yeah.
I started working nonstop when I actually stopped caring, for lack of a better word, or stop, just it's not.
You just realize you're enough. Yeah. And I've said this before. It's like we get in front of the camera and you feel like I've got to do more and I've got to,
Yeah, or even an audition. You're like, okay, how do I make them remember me?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And now just, I maybe don't care at all. And they're like, oh man, that guy that didn't care.
That's right.
But it's hard when you have the bite of rent in expensive cities, you have the bite of, you don't want to do these other jobs and stuff. And I do think, David, to your point about extra work, I never did it. I feel like I never had to do it, luckily. And I think it's tricky if someone like they go to an expensive acting school. It's hard for them to then be like, I'm going to go do extra work. However, blue collar actors who have made it, I've known a lot of them personally. They started doing extra work.
Absolutely.
There's no pretension. There's no expectation. They're like, I had to work.
Yep. Well, this is an interesting question. So hearing you say, fame never really interested me, and also just some of the enthusiasm I think that we're sensing from you about writing and things, I want to ask, and you've been very honest and open with us, and I want to ask a really sort of forthcoming question. So you and I sat down a while back, or I think it was at the after party for We Own This Town, right? The HBO series We Own This Town with John Bernthal, and We Own This City. We Own This City.
Yeah, David and George.
Right. And you and I sat down, we talked a little bit, and one of the things I really took away from that conversation was you said, I'm not sure that acting is really doing it for me anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm not, and you and I, and then it was like, okay, hey, it's last call, and we parted ways. So I want to kind of use this as an excuse to ask you about that. And that's also, I think, a really valuable question to ask and to hear an actor with a lot of experience like you answer. Yeah.
So look, it's a bigger thing. It's personal, but it's also, it takes a dimension of the business, right? I think the medium itself is amazing. We all know how amazing it can be. We've all been in classes. We've all been affected by performances, to get to a place where you can express yourself to your fullest and have agency, like I said. I said, yeah, I can keep trying this, but I'm always relying on someone to say, you can express yourself. Just very simply. And I have way too many opinions, whether they're like political, personal, aesthetic. And I would be in my life, not only my financial, but my creative is in the hands of people who I feel some people have a maybe specific perspective about how things are and they work. Now that thought spreads to trends. So, I might go into an area that you don't want, so reel me back. But in the current climate we're in, everyone says, well, you have to have diversity, which is true. Anyone who says you don't is ridiculous, right?
Right.
I don't think if you understand the history of even this country or profession, you can have anything to say against the fact that people of color, minorities should, have equal pay, equal access, all those things.
More representation, absolutely.
But as a person who's American and Jewish on that side, and Italian from Northern Italy, Florence on the other side, Catholic, where do you put me? I went to colleges, I went to prep schools. Well, the industry would probably want me to be an Italian American, right?
Which you've done, which I've done. They've slotted you into that, right?
I can do it. They slot me in and
pay the rent,
pay good rent, right?
Yes.
It is pretty damn limiting to say, okay, well, that's what I'm going to do. Well, okay, I speak 4 languages fluently. I went to like all types of school. Like, so if that's what it's going to be, it all just coalesced. The Deuce for me was like, okay, I've never played a mobster before. I was like, great, this is it. Let me play a mobster the way I would want a mobster to be. And then after that, I was like, I need to go make this movie that I've been writing. Right? This is time for me. And my movie has nothing to do with mob or gangs or tough guys or anything. It's a New York City story. You know what I mean? It's something that is about my sensibility, not as the business sees me, but mine. Formed from that school I went to in France, formed from 20 years of being an actor, formed from the literature I read, from the music I was, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it just was a natural thing that it took me my own path to get to. And I still will act for sure. But, it's not anything that I am like, this is what I need to do. And it's the only thing I need to do. And it's my calling. No, expression, art is what I'm interested in on all fronts. And so that was kind of the turn. I got to say, like, back to what I was saying, it frees you up in a lot of ways.
That must feel good.
It feels good. And also, lo and behold, jobs come. Why? I'm not the most spiritual human being, but there is something about that energy,
Do you I heard you say that, you don't necessarily cast yourself maybe in this, these parts, or do you write for yourself? Or are you just writing for the experience of writing and creating story? And then at the end of the day, is this something that you would direct though?
I would direct 100%. I would 100% direct. I've made 3 short films, and after the edit of the second one, I was like, oh, this is what I should be doing. But that was before the Deuce. So you see, it started to form early, but then I was working and I had great life. But I was like, in an edit room is where everything that I learned at that theater school in France came together, which was about rhythm, space, movement, sound, all these like elemental things that you don't necessarily think about when you're building a moment, an emotional truth, even though they are baked in there, right?
Yeah.
Being a director, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're not an actor anymore.
Exactly.
So maybe you are a director.
That's right.
You're proving it now. You've already shown you're played your cards. You are a director who has some desire to act every once in a while, but it's not your desire to be on the cover of some magazine. Your desire is to be creative individual and to share your feelings and color and light and music and everything. And
at the risk of being reductive, I need and want to make things. That's it.
My father was an actor, became a director, and, you know, continued to act later in his life, and, you know, was an actor in many movies. You look at someone like, you know, Sidney Pollack was a director. He was also an actor. These guys, you know,
or the guy that was doing that Tar, the movie with Cate Blanchett. He's an actor. I forget his name, but what about the guy who did Spotlight? He was in The Wire.
Right.
You know, that guy.
Yep.
And by the way, some of the directors that I've worked with who were actors, you're like, oh, especially on, you guys know, on TV where it's that machine of just director comes in, director goes out, director comes in, and then you get one. I recently worked with that actor from the 80s, Andrew McCarthy.
Yeah.
Right.
He'll say one thing and you're like, that's a breath of fresh air.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, because he knows how he wants to be talked to as an actor, and he knows that there's nuance. And absolutely. I mean, I felt that way. I felt that way with every director I've worked with who was an actor. I felt that way about Tim Busfield. I mean, you know, like lots of people who are, you know, they bring that sensibility to directing. And I think, you know, really what I'm taking away from this too is that, you know, there's some stigma early on to being a hyphenate, you know, and I think young actors especially sometimes feel like I have to just have the drive to be famous as an actor. I have to just, you know, but in truth, you know, if you want to have longevity in this business, you really do just have to have the desire to want to make things, to tell stories. And any way you can tell a story, I feel like you're telling us, you know, we should allow ourselves to explore that. We should allow ourselves to
100%.
To find the freedom and the creativity to tell a story in any way we want. I mean, I've tried sitting down to write, and it's terrible. It's cliched, and it's not my.
Well, you're a social guy. You kind of fall into that category I was saying before. Like you're personable. You like being with people. It's hard, man.
Well, it's solitary work, but also I find that it's not necessarily what jazzes me. It's not like, this writing feels good. But it's interesting when I have had a chance to direct a little bit in the past, I'm like, I like the idea of telling a story from this point of view. And it's, you know, it all comes together. I mean, it's all creativity.
It's true. And it doesn't necessarily have to be writing or directing it, but I encourage, you know, painting, building things, whatever it is. Lo and behold, look at actors who reach the apex of our profession. Like, how many of them all of a sudden go to produce? They do. You know, how many try to like other endeavors? You know, they things that reflect something else that's going on in their inner world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you look at it that way, to me, it's actually opportunity. You know? Yeah.
And that's a positive way to look at it, you know, and we're all about the positive here on Confessions of a Working Actor. So,
except for this segment.
Yeah, that's true.
We usually do. We do a segment where we ask every guest their worst audition story ever.
Oh, right.
Do you have a worst audition story you want to share with us?
So here's the thing. I don't. No, I don't. But I come.
Well, we don't want you to make one up. We don't do that.
But I have a moment where this is PG. This thing.
No, fuck that. No,
okay,
you say
great. I have one where I literally was a nanosecond away from shitting my pants, and it was. But the thing is this: it wasn't like I'm sure there've been horrible auditions. But I've been lucky that I've been able to walk out and be like, whatever. Or you go through the day 2 of The Hangover and you're like, whatever, and you move on. I did go into audition for a play. Okay, get this. Spike Lee was going to direct. It was initially a play, and then they made it into a film. And he was going to do the play Stalag 13 or 16 or something.
Right.
Like
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so I get an audition for this thing. And it's on 42nd Street.
I like this already.
Listen, it's on 42nd Street. It's with this casting director who gave me my first job in the Broadway, The View from the Bridge, who I've never seen ever since, which is another thing that's important actors should know about casting directors. They round robin and you're their favorite, and then they disappear and then they come back. It's almost like there's too many of us, or they don't know they're fucking with people's lives. It's one of the two. But anyway.
Let's go with the former. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll go with the former.
So I go into this room. The biggest motherfucking room I've ever been in. It was one of these Broadway rehearsal rooms that had 4 times the size of the ceiling. It was like a Sony theater or something, right? And there's that table, that like Gestapo table.
Yeah.
They're all sitting
like
behind the
7,
table,
10
arms
people
crossed.
And in the middle is Spike Lee.
Damn.
And I walk in and it's like a scene, maybe 2, right? And I had to go to the bathroom. I timed it wrong. And I go to the middle. I'm like, hey, nothing. I got like a nod, right? So, dude, I go and do the scene, and 3/4 of the way through the scene, I'm about to poop my pants. And instead, thankfully, I just go up on the line. And I go like this. I bend over and I go, take a long, uncomfortable break. And I say, shit. And I look up. So it's not a horrible story, because I look up and Spike Lee's looking at me, goes, you can start from the beginning. It's all good. So it was, look, I didn't get the job. I don't even think he did the play, but it was the apex of the nerves and a physical reaction met by what you'd expect from not like the most gregarious dude was actually, or friendly dude was actually, it had a softer landing.
A little bit of compassion. Well,
a little bit of compassion.
Yeah. That's listen, the reason we ask these stories, we ask every person who comes on, is not, it's not about the dirt. It's not about how hard everything is. It's that we all remember that we've all been there. We've all had terrible auditions. And whether it's literally that you can't remember your lines, or something about the craft or your preparation, or whether you go in and your body betrays you, it's like,
hey,
listen, it all happens.
You're reminding me of, maybe you talked about it, but the book Auditioning by Joanna Merlin.
Sure.
Joanna was one of my mentors. She was the casting director that I was sent to when I was 18. And I recommend that book to everyone and anyone. And I think there's a moment in it where Marlon Brando hit the stage at 23 and everyone was like, who's this guy? And they looked at the books and they're like, oh, he'd auditioned 50 million times.
Yeah.
No one paid attention. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's full of stories like that. I don't want to oversell those stories though, because our profession is built on story and myth, and there's a tendency to be like, take that one and you create 50,000 dreams and people get, but
that's why that's why we're doing a lot of different stories. And I want to segue to our last segment, because I think it's a good time to do that, because you said something about this audition that I think I don't know if this will be your best piece of advice, but it might be. We'll see. We also ask our guests, what's your one piece of advice? What's that best piece of advice that you would give to other actors, other creative people? And I just want to, it doesn't have to be this, but you just said, you go into the audition and then you leave it and you go out and maybe you have the post-audition hangover for a day or two, but then you're like, whatever, and you forget about it. And we have heard other actors talk about that, about go in, do your work, and go home and get on with your life. And I wonder if you can talk about that a little bit.
So I want to answer that because it's a good one, but I want to maybe I don't know if I should tell you before or after 2 encounters with very well established actors that I think played into this somehow, because they did give me a sense of hope and just that everyone is in this weird, strange situation together. So which would you want to hear first? I'm easy. You guys drive.
Either. Come on. Just whatever feels right.
Yeah, bring it.
Okay. So listen, I'm doing a play in Los Angeles at the Pasadena Playhouse, and I'm playing the lead in Biloxi Blues. And there's a director who was horrible. Hack, complete. Okay. And I'm struggling. I don't even know in one of the scenes where I have to go to the prostitute, actress had a drug issue and she went from the first line to the last line. It was just, the whole thing was a mess. But she was wonderful, this woman. And she saw I was struggling. She said, do you want to go? My friend Tony will help you. And I said, sure. He lives in Hancock Park. I'm like, he'll just help me? Sure. So I go, he's great with this stuff. I go to this nice house, pull up in my Toyota Celica, and I ring the doorbell, and Tony Shalhoub answers the door. Hey, how are you? You're so-and-so. Come in. Do you mind sitting in here? No. He goes over the whole play with me and explains how it's done, what I'm at his house the whole evening.
Oh my God.
And I'm sitting there. This was a long time. This is like early 2000s. So, and at the end of the night, I was like, can I give you anything? He said, you like ice cream? I was like, yeah. He goes, why don't you take me and my daughter for an ice cream? I was like, okay. They pile into my crummy Celica. We go to Larchmont.
Amazing.
Okay?
Amazing.
That's a true story.
Amazing.
That's good, right? I got another one more, and then I'll get to the last thing.
Mm-hmm.
I did a mini series with David Simon, in which I had the fortune to play this really dweeby mayor. And then from that, he cast me in The Deuce to play the opposite, this like heavy. And one day I show up. David's not like super aware of actors. He kind of loathes them jokingly, but you know, he was a journalist, right? Master, and I fucking love the guy. But one day I show up, and him and Bill Zorzi, the writer, I had to give a little talk at a podium. He goes, "Hey, we just wrote you this thing, and it's a page of dialogue." I go, "What do you mean? We shoot in 10 minutes." He goes, "Yeah, so just learn this, and then we'll start with that."
Oh.
And I'm like, it's David Simon. I'm like, what am I supposed to say that? Fortuitously, Catherine Keener, who was also in that miniseries, had just wrapped her day, and she's standing there. They walk away. She looks at me and she goes, "Come here." She takes me into a back room of the set and runs the monologue, runs the speech with me for about 5 to 7 minutes.
Wow. That's it. I bet because she'd been there, that had happened to her. And, you know, you got to treat each other well. That's it. We got to show up for each other.
Now, the last thing to answer your question, I know it was a roundabout way, but I thought
love
it was important stories.
That's the meaning of a podcast, is a roundabout way. So go for it. Yeah, good.
Now, my answer might let you down, but it's a bit philosophical, and it comes from writing.
We would expect nothing less from you, Daniel.
And it's how these two things blend, and I think it's fundamental for creative life. My late friend Dave, who was the best screenwriter I know, taught me a lot about writing. He's an English guy, great soccer player too. This is the advice I'd give to actors, but it's also it's the perfect way of where it just all blends, okay? When I'm struggling through a scene, I said, "Dave, just tell me, like, what's the ABC?" And he goes, "Okay, your character achieves his goal, but not how he expects, or your character doesn't achieve his goal, but receives something else unexpected."
That's gold.
That's how it works.
That's gold.
I'm gonna have to rewrite my script I'm working on right now.
But dude, that's how
that's
the whole
it.
thing
That's
works.
it. That's
the root of creativity.
Yeah, and discovery. And discovery.
Yeah. And it's the root. It's how you have to go through all this stuff. You can't go in beyond saying, "Focus, do this," because then you're not open to what else is being shown to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and we've talked about curiosity and discovery, and I'm not surprised to hear you say what you said, and that's I think that's great advice, and I don't think it's roundabout at all. I think that's
good.
I think that's fantastic advice. Oh my God, I don't want to stop, Chris.
No, this is terrific. I really appreciate it.
We'll do the part 2. Where are they now?
Yeah,
we'll do the part 2.
You can come back. You know, there's no reason why you can't come back.
That's right. And by the way, we just have to stop because I have to go use the bathroom. That's all.
Yeah, I have to go to the dentist, to be honest with you.
Oh, ouch. All right, I was kidding.
My goal, which is a cleaning. I do not want to receive anything unexpected in that.
Well, you may get something else. Be open to it. We'll see. You never know.
A root canal. A gold cap.
A gold cap. A grill. You're going to come on with a grill.
I'm going to get grilled.
Hey, listen, it might work in your favor. Who knows? Daniel Serafini-Sauli, thank you.
Thanks for having me, guys. That was fun.
Great to hear from you.
Yeah, it was terrific.
Great to talk to you.
Yeah, would have been nice to have this when I was, when we were all coming up.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the idea, is just to, share some stories, share some ideas, some advice, and some, some real honest stuff. And we appreciate your honesty. And
beautiful. I appreciate you guys, and I respect your sound booth like a mother.
Thanks.
It takes a village, man. That's what I'm hearing. You can't do it alone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the beauty of what we do. It's what's difficult, but it's the beauty.
I love those stories about, just about people helping, about actors helping actors and, directors. And I met Tony Shalhoub, and he just strikes me as a prince of a guy. No surprise there. And,
Tip-top. I got spoiled, man.
Yeah,
Anthony LaPaglia and Liam Neeson were my 2 first. Those guys are wonderful humans.
Yeah. Yep. Great reputations. Great. Well, thank you for sharing all that with us, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, guys. All right.
We were happy to have
Grandpa.
you.
Bye, guys.
All right. Yeah.
Cheerio, Chris. Greetings to you across the pond in London. And I guess you and I will connect next time on Confessions of a Working Actor.
Well, it's been another great 20 minutes with you, my friend.
And you too, brother. It's been fun.
Yeah, that was great.
Cool. I thought that was awesome. All right, star that.
That was terrific.
And we got another great guest coming up next week, so be sure to tune in again to Confessions of a Working Actor.